Hi guys, Daniel and Mariah here, and today we're going to be talking about the effects that family can have on our relationships.
Yeah, so there's this saying that you stumbled upon a few years ago,
Yeah.
and it goes,
The saying is, Jesus is in your heart, but grandpa is in your bones. And basically what it's trying to get at is, although someone, especially within the framework of Christianity, could be transformed by Jesus and his love, but when it comes down to like your behavior, how your psychology intersects with your biology, your family of origin has real effects on how you live, how you deal with relationships, how you handle stress, and how you resolve conflict.
yeah,
And I see it personally in my life in a lot of ways. And what we have to do often when we talk about the impacts of family on who you are is realize that it's not just negative, it's also positive. So family can affect you by, I guess, depositing a love for music. And maybe your family is super musical, and because of that, you have an ability to pick up on music by ear.
yeah,
Or maybe your family is really into visual arts and you just have an eye for painting or drawing.
yeah. Or maybe your family's super encouraging,
Yeah.
and so you're really good at naturally
It just comes out of you.
encouraging. Yeah,
Yeah. And maybe it's like a positive disposition.
yeah,
But we have to realize that family also affects the way we are psychologically because of this like intersection between our psychology and biology.
yeah.
So
And I
there's
feel like
things-
it has a lot to do with, like, I've heard that trauma can last for 8 generations as well. Like, we have to just acknowledge that things can be passed on generationally. And that is important to look at your family tree, look at what's happened in the past, and see how it's affecting you in your life
Yeah, and
today.
I think sometimes we like look at our family tree when it comes to like health.
Yeah.
So we'll say like, is diabetes in my family like far back? Is cancer, low blood sugar, high blood sugar, cholesterol.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that oftentimes we don't look at the very almost like intangibles of interpersonal skills,
Yeah.
of stress tendencies and stuff like
Yeah.
that. I think what made me think about this, I guess most readily, was just watching how I interact in our marriage, and I realized that there's parts of my mom that are positive that come out, but parts of my mom that are negative that come out.
Yeah.
Same with my dad, parts that are positive, parts that are negative.
Yeah.
And I think that if we don't have a real rein on who we are and how where we came from affects who we are,
Yeah.
it will affect our kids, it will affect our significant other, it will affect how we interact with our colleagues
Yeah.
if we don't really take a look at it and almost like fortify ourselves against it as
Yeah,
well.
it's funny too, because like I feel like some of the stuff you might not even realize is an issue or a problem because it's so normal in your family for generations. Like, I think of my family kind of on both sides. It feels like a temper, like a easily angered quality is pretty normal. And growing up, I more thought it was like funny because half of my side is Portuguese, and so I feel like it's like, oh, of course we're like fiery and we get angry, and but like when it comes to having my own marriage and my own family, it's like, well, I don't want to be that way. I don't want to get mad just like that, and I don't want to yell all the time, and I don't want to have, like, from my other side, like road rage and like getting in fights and like all this stuff that was so typical for my family. I'm kind of realizing, oh, maybe I don't want those qualities, you know?
Yeah, and I think that what can sometimes work against us is that sometimes these vices that are actually negative things can be glorified. We almost love to, within our family structures, glorify these vices. So we can say like, oh, like again, this isn't an example from your family or my family, but we could say like, oh, dad always had a temper. My dad didn't have a temper, so that's not him. But like, dad always had a temper. He always just like lost it at every person in the road, or he always had a, and we can almost laugh about it. Or like, if we're coming from more ethnic homes, we can like almost like mimic the accent. And we can say oh, the way they would yell at us was like this. And like the families are laughing about these things that, again, if we don't have a rein on it, can really impact our relationships, but also our families to come.
Yeah.
And so And I think that it's not enough to just acknowledge the vices or acknowledge what's been passed down the family tree when it comes to these characteristics that are negative in our families of origin. I think that if grandpa's in your bones and the positives of grandpa, but also the negatives of grandpa are in your bones, you have to take inventory of the positives and negatives. And for the negatives, you have to almost like fortify yourself against those things.
Yeah, you definitely have to actively work. Like, I think of a common one is when divorce is in families for generations. It's like, you do have the power to stay married, even if generations behind you are divorced. But you can't just like naturally live your life and expect that that's going to happen. You have to actively work at it.
Yeah, and I think that something that's more personal to me is that alcoholism is something that's like a pretty significant vice in my family of origin. Yeah. Thankfully, I didn't grow up with specifically on my dad's side, but I didn't grow up with a dad or a mom that was like heavy into drinking. Yeah. So I didn't really have that in the home as a mental model. But it is something that I realize, whether it be me, siblings, cousins, parents, have a predisposition towards. So I can't just be like, oh, we're predisposed towards alcoholism. So I can just be like willy-nilly or like casual about alcohol in my life. Yeah. But it's important for me to set up boundaries. I'll go through seasons on end, like a season we're in now, where I'm just not drinking anything. Yeah. And thankfully it's not like a need I have. Yeah. And it's just...
You can do that.
Yeah. It's not like a need I have to soothe or for fun. I feel like I can engage in healthy conversations and social environments without alcohol. But it is something that I have to be mindful of. And I think similarly, whether it be like a temper or talking down on a significant other or emotional abuse, whatever it is, you have to be mindful of those things that are coming down through your family tree and actively work at fortifying yourself against those things.
Because in this case, ignorance is not bliss.
Yeah.
It's like if you ignore it, you're going to find yourself doing it. I find you have to actively work against it.
And we have to realize that sometimes it's like out of our control. Yeah. Like that's the thing with like things that are so deeply embedded in our like psyche and in our biology is like sometimes they just come out when we're grieving and you live a whole life without grief. You've never had someone die, so you've never seen it. And it's like, oh, in grief, or it's like maybe it comes out in marriage where you live up until you're in your 20s or 30s and you don't see this thing come out. And then it comes out when you're married and you're like, whoa, I just saw my mom in what I just did. Or I just saw my dad in what I just did. Yeah. And so I remember there was one friend of ours who realized that some of their like stress behaviors was really similar to their mom's, but they didn't realize it till they were like 19, 20. And they were trying to grapple with the like, oh, but I love my mom, but I recognize that this part of her is something that I actually have to actively like work against.
It's like when I'm stressed, I just shut down. Yeah. And she had to realize, oh, I've learned this growing up.
Yeah. So I love the term like Jesus is in your heart, but grandpa's in your bones. But if you're not Christian, you can say like just grandpa's in your bones. Like you're affected. I don't know. You're affected by your family tree.
Yeah, but I think something I do want to like end this with is that there is hope. Yeah. Like, there's always hope to break those things that have been passed on through generations. There's hope to be different than your family, because I think sometimes I can feel like a bit bogged down, like, oh, am I always going to be like this? Is it going to be hard? Like, will I ever break past this? Will I ever? And so just knowing that there is hope, just keep working at it, keep being aware of it, keep having good friends and family in your life who will call you out on things. I think that's important.
Yeah, like I think that thankfully, like, there's healing. Like, I think that, like, the millennial generation and the Gen Z generation is becoming even more warm to things like counseling. Yeah. Like, there's ways for you, and even, like, having deeper conversations. Yeah. There's ways for you to, like, really attack these things head on through exposing them first. I know for me, because I'm a Christian and because so much of my life has been shaped and transformed by the presence of Jesus in my life and the power of his word, I know that there's healing in the cross, but I think that there's ways that people can work on improving themselves through counseling and through making sure that they have accountability. Like if they're going out and maybe they're trying to work against like say it's like rage or temper, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
It's like they tell a friend, hey man, like if I express like undue anger when I'm driving during our road trip or wherever we're going, could you just tell me? Because I want to work towards becoming a better version. I love something that my dad always would say to me and my siblings. He would always say like, my hope is for you to be better than me, not settle for what I am.
Yeah.
And I think that he always had this healthy, almost this healthy view of self.
Yeah.
In stating that I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
I will fail you.
Yeah.
I will disappoint you.
Yeah.
But your goal is to be better than me, not be me.
I think you could even spin that onto yourself. Like, I hope that Mariah 5 years from now will be better than me.
Yeah, exactly.
Like now. And I hope that Mariah 10 years from now will be better than me now. Instead of getting more ingrained in these like bad habits or ways I act out or ways I act in stress, I will be able to overcome that in 5, 10, 20 years or whatever.
Yeah. And I think the last thing I'd say to people out there, just to encourage you, is that you aren't your family tree. Mm-hmm. You're an extension of it. Mm-hmm. And I think that like a regular tree, you can choose to be a redemptive version of that tree, so a positive version of that tree that bears fruit, or you can just choose to be a branch that mirrors and almost like is symmetrical with the other branches that maybe aren't so healthy. And I want to encourage you to take the step in becoming the healthier branch or the healthiest version of that tree that you can be, and bearing good fruit that turns into more good fruit and more good fruit and more good fruit. So my hope is that as Mariah and I continue to evolve in our relationship, we would be the best version of our family tree that we can be, so that our kids could be even better versions of that tree than we are. Yeah. So just be encouraged in that your family tree isn't the final say, but because you're allowing this tree to expand through you, you could actually redeem the story that is your family tree. Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. Tomorrow is always a new day to tackle that all over again. Exactly. So perfect. Exactly. Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us in this conversation. I think that I would love to see some people's kind of reflections on this in the comments. We believe that the best conversations are the ones that are happening in the comments, not the one that's happening here. And so make sure to comment below if you have any thoughts or things to add to the conversation. And please like and subscribe. And